If you would like to support the podcast and get some extra content while you're there, head on over to patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast and sign up. From the rewatch to the Q&A, we will have loads of content every week. So sign up, patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast. And now, here's the podcast.
Graham McDonald is an idiot.
Sean Sheehan of SevereMMA.com. He even has the audacity to call himself the quote-unquote pod god.
This is SevereMMA.
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 The SevereMMA podcast is finally here.
Welcome to the SevereMMA podcast. Here's your host, Sean Sheehan.
Welcome everybody. It's episode 417 of the SevereMMA podcast. My name is Sean Sheehan, joined today by the Martin Scorsese of Irish MMA media, Graham McDonald. As we have a bit of a different podcast this week, we're going to talk about two things this week, two of the biggest stars in our sport. First of all is Francis Ngannou and his big decision to sign with the PFL. We're going to look at all sides of that. But we're also going to talk about Conor McGregor because I have Graham with me, who has obviously been with Conor since day one doing the documentary, and a new Conor McGregor documentary has come out on Netflix. Graham was a producer on that, so I'm going to put some of the questions you sent in to him on that and talk about some of my own thoughts on it as well. So we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, we must tell you that this episode of the podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Manscaped. Friends, family and loved ones, it's Father's Day is coming up, and have you got a gift for him yet? Fear not, the leaders in below the waist grooming are here. I'm talking about our friends at Manscaped. They're saving the day yet again. Saving the day. Should have said they're shaving the day. There you go. With a total package for the father figure in your life this year. It's time to upgrade his game from waist to face with this exclusive offer. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code SevereMMA at manscaped.com and join the 8 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. And it was funny, actually. I was going through my Manscaped stuff yesterday, or my general care stuff today, and I found a bottle of the Manscaped cologne, I suppose you call it, perfume I nearly call it, and I was like, I absolutely love it, and I love that because I'm always finding like little Manscaped gifts around the place, and they're absolutely fantastic. And you know, it's as I said, I'm always finding little gifts, but you could give a gift for your father, the father figure in your life as well. Make him the MVP with the Performance Package 4.0. In that, you'll find the Lawnmower 4.0, which is a waterproof, cordless body trimmer with a ton of other liquid formulations to go around and use for your grooming routine. The trimmer features a ceramic blade designed to cut hair on loose skin and reduce grooming accidents thanks to the advanced skin-safe technology. It's an absolute game changer for the sensitive areas. But what about the nose hairs as well? And we all know that the fathers have some of them. Well, the Weed Whacker 2.0 is for that. It trims the ear and nose hair. It's a perfect gift for Father's Day, really. With this beautiful bundle also comes the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant, Crop Reviver Toner, which everyone knows I love, as well as the Boxer Briefs and the Shed Travel Bag, which I use all the time. We all know dads love their comfort. If this grooming routine is already dialed, make sure to hook in with the Manscaped Boxers 2.0. They are without doubt the best boxers for men of all ages. The dual pouch is designed to comfortably care for the specific region, whether he's mowing the lawn, taking out the trash, or golfing in the sun. These moisture wicking boxers breathe without breaking a sweat. So our call to action is basically this: get 20% off and free shipping with the code SevereMMA at manscaped.com. 20% off, free shipping at manscaped.com using the code SevereMMA. Make this Father's Day one he won't forget with Manscaped. And you know what? While you're there, why not head over to our friends at Caldera Lab, use the promo code SevereMMA as well, and get 20% off their products. They're absolutely brilliant. 9 out of 10 men experience healthier and visibly improved skin with Caldera Lab in their leading clinical trial. Their skincare needs for the man in your life, they're absolutely brilliant. They create high-performance men's skincare products by combining pharmaceutical-grade science along with nature's purest and most potent ingredients. And as you age, you have those fine lines, you have those signs of aging. But if you use Caldera Lab, they'll absolutely help. The Regimen Bundle leads their lineup, a twice-a-day routine to transform your skin. So first of all, you start off with the clean slate. It's where you start your day. It's a balancing cleanser that uses plant-based cleansing, leaving all skin types exceptionally refreshed. In the base layer is a nutrient-dense fortifying moisturizer that hydrates your skin and absorbs fast, leaving you with a matte finish so you can start your day confidently. The Good is your go-to at night before bed, and a clinically proven multifunctional serum that helps your skin look tighter and smoother, as well as helping to reduce visibility of wrinkles and fine lines. In every drop of the serum, there's 3.4 million antioxidant units, who counted them, protecting your skin. What does that mean, you ask? I don't know, but it must be good. Do you know what? I love doing these reads when there's no, they realise there might be a little bit of bullshit. But I appreciate that. It works though, and that's all you want. The icon as well, that's really good for around your eyes. It helps address the three most common skin concerns around the eye: fine lines, dark circles, and puffiness. I've used that a couple of times, and honestly, as someone who doesn't get much sleep, it's unreal. Committed to transparency, sustainability, and excellence, Caldera Lab is on a mission to better men's skincare around the world. Priding itself on clean ingredients and doing right by their customers and the planet we live in, Caldera is a certified B Corporation as well as a member of the 1%. For the planet, through uncompromising craftsmanship, exceptional ingredients, and rigorous transparency, Caldera Lab is here to upgrade your skin and confidence. So get 20% off with our code SevereMMA at calderalab.com. That's 20% off at calderalab.com using the code SevereMMA. Take your skincare to the next level this summer with Caldera Lab. All right, I suppose we'll start Graham by talking about the whole Conor McGregor documentary and the 4-part.
You never shut up about that lad. Come on, jeez.
Isn't it funny though? Because every time we talk about him, every maybe few months, I always feel like we actually don't talk about him enough. For an Irish MMA podcast, when we have the biggest star in the history of the sport, we actually rarely talk about him. We probably mention him every week in terms of I threw a shot like McGregor, or I did something, but to actually sit down and talk about
it. We're not making a headline out of it like a lot of other outlets might tend to do. Yeah,
that's true. But I suppose now is a better time than ever, considering he's tough a starting this week, I think, and the documentary came out, obviously, which you were a producer on, and you've been a producer and a big part of all the documentaries so far. Now, I had a few people when I said it today, I kind of jokingly said I'm having the producer of the McGregor documentary on the podcast this week, without mentioning I have him on every week. But anyway, I have you here. I don't know, should I be interviewing here and you here or not, Graham? But we'll decide that as we go.
That would be a bit weird, wouldn't it?
That would be a bit weird. But how has it been being part of these documentaries in different one on Netflix and one Fight Pass and Fox Sports and one in cinemas and one in RT, and it feels like there's been about 30 documentaries at this stage, but it's been a long road. You've been there since day one. I think the one kind of piece that's been shown, I think, in every documentary nearly is Conor hitting the bag, with the gum shield in and talking in the yellow mats, and that's kind of the original SevereMMA kind of documentary on him, wasn't it? And it's kind of been...
Well, yeah, that was actually... We only cut about 4 or 5 minutes of that interview from 20 minutes or more even. So maybe someday we'll have to use that.
Just laugh out of that.
I did. I sent it to the Religion of Sports guys who were dealing with clips and editing and that side of things. But yeah, they didn't. I don't know what happened there.
Does SevereMMA own that, or who owns that?
Yeah, SevereMMA would own that old footage. All the old YouTube footage would be on SevereMMA. And whenever anybody asks the UFC or other people to use footage, I always let them, because why not?
Why not, indeed.
But there's been a lot of documentaries at this stage. It started off, as you mentioned, RTE was what was it, 52 minutes probably with ads, an hour, a TV hour around the Max signing for the UFC, kind of getting to the UFC and the Max Holloway fight. Then obviously we had on RTE the 6-part 30 TV minutes each directly after that, which covered kind of his rise in the UFC and the first Poirier fight. And then obviously you mentioned the Universal release in November 2017, which is ridiculous that it's actually nearly 6 years ago, 5.5 years ago now. It's a bit mad, but that obviously came out and has been went in cinemas and stuff and sold a lot, and it was the most successful ever Irish documentary and all that stuff. So that was great. And obviously now Netflix, the kind of model has changed over the years. Everything's kind of going more towards streaming and things like that. So this 4-part obviously just came out on Netflix there on Wednesday, and yeah, it's been a mad journey. Obviously, at the start it was like a fairy tale rise, and knocked out Aldo and won the belt, and obviously the ups and downs of MMA, lost to Diaz, got that back, beat Eddie Alvarez, like creating history and things like that. Like that was just an unbelievable time to be following Conor around and being in the thick of things and seeing everything kind of from a unique perspective. And these days I'm not traveling around with Conor the last year or two, but I'm still working on the documentary and seeing all the footage and logging all the footage and things like that. And yeah, it's a mad story overall. And yeah, there's been a lot of documentaries, and maybe I saw a lot of people or a few people anyway online saying it's a bit too early for a Conor McGregor documentary. I don't think they realize that we've already pumped out loads of documentaries. So yeah, they'd probably be a bit mad if they realize that.
Watching the 4 pieces, and we'll get into more of them in a second, but like it did feel like episode 1 to 4 of what could be like episode 5 to 8 to come or something like that, if you get me. Like it feels like this story is very much unfinished, which is obviously great for you, make a bit more money out of it and stuff, like which is fantastic for everyone, I suppose. But and we'll get to that, but it did feel it. Even like watching and like knowing obviously everything about McGregor, it feels like, well, where's this story going? Because this is very much unfinished. Now, I actually did think y'all did a great job of getting it to an interesting finished point, I suppose, but also a point, we all have watched films or whatever it might be in the past and thought, oh, okay, well, that was interesting, but like the next one's going to be class or whatever. And with McGregor, like this Chandler fight, if it happens, right, he loses or he wins, there's another part to that story there, so it's great that it's kind of left open as well. But how is this one different, I suppose, to the other ones, Graham? Like I know there was you said originally.
Over the years, it started off with no budget SevereMMA, Gav Fitzgerald, Patrick Timmins Ward following Conor around, kind of paying her own way, all that stuff, and trying to pitch documentaries. Nobody's interested because Conor's not in the UFC. He's only in Cage Warriors. Nobody's really interested. RTE aren't interested. Gav and Paddy went with Conor to the Late Late Show, and Jamie Dalton from Motive TV was there for some other reason with another guest, or filming something with another guest or something. They got talking. We teamed up with him to make the RTE ones. They suddenly got interested, obviously, once Conor kind of made his splash in the UFC, made his debut, and the momentum built even further. Obviously, I mentioned we put out that Max Holloway documentary and the 6-part with RTE, and worked at Motive and both of them, and Paddy and Gav and both of them, and on the notorious Universal release, the one from 2017, Darragh McCarthy, who's a brilliant director of photography and now director on this McGregor Forever, came on board as well, and Gav and Paddy moved on to other things. And for the last few years, it's just been a 2-man team, myself and Darragh working on the footage, and Darragh's obviously been with Conor the whole time, filming and, editing videos as Conor wants them for social media and things like that. He does a lot of work, a lot of unheralded work. Like a lot of people wouldn't even know who Darragh is, and Darragh definitely would get the most credit, I think, in my opinion, by a lot for the documentary. And he has the responsibilities of many people. Like a 2-man team isn't really, myself and Darragh isn't really enough, but we get it done because hard work, and especially from Darragh, as I said, a lot of people maybe never even heard Darragh McCarthy's name, but yeah, he's been absolutely phenomenal throughout this whole McGregor Forever process. And the religion of sport guys, then you kind of put it all together, kind of handed it over to them, and then that was kind of the... Yeah, well, Motive aren't involved anymore now, so Religion of Sport were brought on board, and they were like, myself and Darragh gave them the footage or whatever. We chose what footage to give them, and Darragh kind of, as a director, would kind of mold the storyline, I suppose, but ROS are doing the edit, and they're the main people in the edit, and pulling clips of old clips and pulling talking heads and doing sit down interviews with Conor and John and Ariel and Owen Roddy and all the rest of the people, and probably Julian, Colin, all the kind of narration you hear during the series. So that was their kind of side of things, and myself and Dara were on the footage side of things. But I think ROS did film a few days of training one stage over in America with Conor. But Dara McCarthy is the by far the main provider of the footage filmed we saw, and I was there. When did we start this? This is probably earliest footage is probably 2018. So I would have been with Dara most of the time for the first couple of years, and now the last couple of years he's been a one-man show on the road with Conor. And
you've been obviously doing the editing, so although I suppose,
well, not the editing. I've been processing the footage, logging the footage, and all that kind of thing.
I suppose the earliest footage, like you said, 2018, but the earliest footage in that documentary is what, 2012 or something like that?
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm talking about the kind of new
the new footage, but the oldest footage it must be a decade, like in at least, is it? It's been going on.
Well,
so
we started
incredible.
filming with Conor probably the end of 2011 or the start of 2012, and myself, Gav Fitzgerald, and Patrick Timmins Ward. We obviously made the 10,000 Hours documentary about Paddy Houlihan and Owen Roddy, and we were planning on filming with Conor, but he picked up some injury and it got delayed. But we got it going in the end, and there is some really good old footage that we haven't been able to locate at the moment. I actually was talking to Paddy Timmins Ward recently in the last few weeks about it, and we're trying to locate it, but hopefully it's not lost to time, or hopefully if we do find it and we turn on the hard drive, they still spin and they're not just cooked.
Why, what's in it? Give us a taster.
I wouldn't even be able to remember. It's so long ago, like it's like 10 years ago. But I remember there's a documentary pitch trailer from when we pitched the original documentary to RTE on the SevereMMA YouTube, and there's some footage in that of him and John walking around the kind of Long Mile Road, Crumlin area together before,
I think I remember that.
It's just there's a little snippet of it in the documentary trailer, but the raw footage, I don't know, has to be somewhere and needs to be located.
Did was it Dim Marquez? Did he do something on
Dim
Conor
Marquez did
MTV
Rise of Conor McGregor. Yeah, we helped him with that as well. We did a couple of interviews for him and other things like that. But that was mainly his project. And
as the dog go mad there, we might as well get into the the 4 episodes here itself, because I thought overall, before we get into the actual episodes, I thought they did a very good job. And when I say they, I'll go they rather than you here, Graham, rather than giving you all the credit. But I thought it was a great job of making Conor McGregor likeable, which is probably a hard thing to do at this stage of his career. Like, and when I mean at this stage of his career, I mean like the fights that happened there, like the Khabib fight, where it got very kind of nasty at times. And I know we have a few questions about that. We will get to the questions here in a second as well. But even like the second Poirier fight, but there was kind of like a redemption.
I think if people don't like him before, they're probably not going to like him afterwards. I think it just shows the kind of more human side, maybe. These documentaries kind of do that. They
do, I suppose. But, and like let's be honest here, it's a Conor McGregor documentary from a Conor McGregor point of view. So it's like this is not an independent hit piece documentary or anything like that, or not even like
it's not an expose or
no.
An investigative like journalism documentary. It's a fly on the wall documentary. Like we were filming the fly on the wall documentary, and then ROS took that and mixed in talking heads and narration from like journalists and teammates and coaches and things like that.
And I think like I don't think anyone's shying away from that or anything. And I think if people are looking for something else, like I don't think anyone is saying that this is it. But I thought it, like, because the arc from the Khabib fight, which like it definitely didn't show the Khabib fight as nasty as it got in the documentary, but I think a lot of people knew. But then to show like the Poirier fight where he was nice to Poirier, and he was the Cowboy fight first where he was nice to Cowboy, it like if and there was him after the fights when he lost, when he was kind of crying backstage, but even him with the Conor Jr. and his other kids, and before the one of the Poirier fights when he was kind of sitting in the sitting room and Conor Jr. came over like saying, oh look, there's people fighting on the telly, and Conor was like I'm gonna be fighting there later on. He's like, no way. And then he started boxing him and stuff. That was absolutely hilarious. Like, and you like, I feel like you got a real sense of Conor's actually like a family man, which is very hard to see on the outside, because you don't really, like, you see a bit of that on Instagram and stuff, but it's hard to know on Instagram as well, what's real and what's not. And I suppose you could say the same about the documentary, but you saw like real moments, like whether it's his emotion after fights, as I mentioned, or his emotion with the family and hanging around with Dee and different things like that. I there's a friend of mine text me, and he like does not like Conor, and he does not like MMA, and he was like, I watched like the first 2 episodes or something like it was, and he's like, Jesus, it's making me like him again, kind of thing, which is on it. And like, I'll speak for a lot of the people out there who haven't liked Conor over the last few years and maybe did like him before, that it's, that's definitely a thing. There's no doubt about it. And I think that it did a great job of showing that. But I thought when I don't know if this is on purpose or not, or maybe this is like a very inside MMA thing, but it was like the tough time against Khabib, and then kind of good times against Cerrone, and then he was like really happy kind of during that, happy after it, everything went well, and then obviously the Poirier loss, and then he was fighting to come back. But when he lost to Poirier and he went into the second fight and they showed him in the press conference, I really thought that was like a great clip to show, because everything up until then, from the good parts, but even after the loss in the middle Poirier fight, it was like, right, I'm going to get back, I'm going to work hard. But then they showed him in a press conference and he was like, your wife's your husband sort of thing. And it just felt like there was a click there. It's like, no, this is actually not right. This is not real Conor. Like, this is not Conor that, is natural, that we saw at the start of his career, or even him trying to be nice, or even him like being the family man or being a changed person. This is him trying to be the old Conor. This is him trying to recapture it, and it just was unnatural and didn't seem right. And when he got into the fight, he, like, maybe you can speak more about this, Graham, and we can go through it, but like that injury, he knew, it felt like because him saying like, oh, we'll get the diagnosis and we'll decide if we're gonna fight or not, basically, that's not like something Conor would ever say before, and you could probably speak more to that, but it felt like he was very unnatural coming into that fight, and part of that maybe was the injury, that he knew there was something wrong, and then he broke it, and it was like almost fucking inevitable at that stage. Was that, do you know if that was kind of on purpose in the documentary to kind of do it that way, or was it just kind of the natural ebb of it?
Well, I wasn't. The edit took place in LA, and with ROS in LA, so Los Angeles. So I wasn't in the edit, but that could be the kind of the reason for that. I saw people saying, "Oh, why didn't you include, the Paulie spar? Why didn't you include the Dustin? Why he changed from Dustin or whatever?" And I don't know exactly why the editor shows that, but maybe we don't have Dustin's side of things with the charity donation, and it's a bit of a messy situation, and but that, I think that was the thing that turned the relationship from respect between Conor from Conor to Poirier to the kind of your wife's in my DMs or whatever, all that stuff that you mentioned a minute ago. But yeah, maybe that was something that should have been explored in the documentary, but you can't get everything in as well. Like, people are like, oh, still no Paulie Malignaggi footage, why didn't you put in this, why didn't you put in the old man in the bar? And you can't really go into everything. I can understand people's wanting certain things that they're more interested in as well, but yeah, decisions have to be made in the edit room, and things were left out, or things weren't covered in to the extent that some people wanted, and things like that. But I think that's just always going to be the way. Yeah, and like I think people will kind of understand this. Apologies there for the dogs. I think we have them under control now. Anyway, we'll move on. But as I said, we'll answer a few questions in a second. I mentioned the ankle injury, Graham, and if we've talked about this down through the years, in private, but also on the podcast as well. And it's a very easy thing to talk about with McGregor in terms of like the injuries and him ignoring them, because we've seen him in the old documentaries as well. Like, he gets the injury against
against Chad Mendes, and sorry, before the Chad Mendes fight, we saw the clip of it with Owen Roddy and all that, and he's like, "Oh, my first day."
Even before that, I know we didn't go into it much in the documentary series on RTE, but he also had an injured hand going into the original Dustin Poirier fight. Pretty much every fight, for every fighter, they pick up some kind of injury. It's just, is the injury too much to deal with? And some people are, more willing to pull out than others. And Conor's just one of those that always tries to battle through. And I think, we showed that with the 2 ACL problems and the knee problems that he had going into the Mendes fight, as you were mentioning there.
This one, it's funny. Myself and Harry, we actually recorded the podcast yesterday, coming out on Thursday for the Speaker's Corner, and we talked a little bit about McGregor and how he had convinced himself, basically the secret sort of stuff. Everything's going to be fine. Everything is for a reason, and I'm going to get there. And it worked for him, right? And it felt like this 4-part documentary showed that is no longer the case, right? That you can't keep doing that. It's not always going to work. Like episode 1, the biggest part of it was, I suppose, at the very start when, they showed the broken foot, the dislocated toes kind of thing, whether it was a broken foot or not. I don't know, did you ever find out, Graham, or whatever? Maybe you could tell us. But didn't Habib fight? And that's where the kind of whole my foot was a balloon thing came from and all of that. And I know we have briefly mentioned it before in the podcast. And I don't know how much you can talk about these things and all of that, but we saw it in the documentary. So it's, I suppose we're kind of free enough to talk about it. But that injury, it felt like, right, to me, and I don't know if you felt the same, obviously looking at the more extended clips and stuff, that it was way worse than he wanted to acknowledge to himself. It was like, this fucking injury was really bad. He knew it. He popped the toes back in. He's like, okay, it's fine. That's grand. And he's like, he decided in that very moment he was fighting, and that was it. And that's probably the moment you should say, and the doctor should probably say, or whoever's around him should probably say, here, Conor, we have to get a fucking x-ray, we have to get a scan, or whatever it might be it is. Let's see if there's big damage, and if there is, you're not having this fucking fight, because it's too big. You
even see what happens, it's hard to, he's a hard man to talk to. If you see when he goes to the LA Rams NFL facility, and the LA Rams physio and Dr. Neil Elatrasher, there's a scan there, and they're kind of, Conor's always just asking, how can I train around this? What can you do to help me? I'll be grand. If as long as I can do this and this, I'll be fine. That
was after the foot break though, wasn't it?
But that's always the mentality of, I can work around it. You see him with is that scene still in when he has the pins in his hand?
His hand, yeah.
And he's trying to work
the rower
with
right
this weird technique.
Yeah, that's in it.
Just to work around it, that's just the attitude. That's just the mentality and mindset of nothing's going to stop me. It's just another obstacle. That's just the way he's always been.
But that's grand training like that. But going into a fight like that, it feels like now it used to be a thing that made Conor McGregor.
You think if I can get through the camp, then there's only maximum 25 minutes, possibly shorter, to get through the fight. So that's probably the thinking that's going on in the head. If I can just get through the camp, if I can use this foot cast thing or whatever, and use deep tissue massages or whatever. I'm not an expert in physiotherapy or whatever, but I can get through this. I've gotten through ACLs as worse things than this, and also the same thing applies to the toes and the hand and the all the injuries. And Conor's not the only one. Everybody gets injuries in MMA, but sometimes most people would pull out, and it's probably advisable to pull out.
Do you think that toe foot injury was worse than he let on? Maybe
Well, I know work was going on that toe all the way up until the fight. You saw a bit of it with Dr. Heather Linden in the UFC PI in Las Vegas. She was working on that toe, and it definitely did restrict, Conor's training a little bit. But I'm sure every fighter and every camp has to work around things. So it's hard to know exactly how much the mindset going in, or the bad blood, or the injuries, or it's hard to know which factors played and which factors played the most, or if it was a combination of many factors.
Yeah, and I suppose the end of the first episode was the Habib fight and the crying afterwards, and I suppose one of the biggest clips that's gone around from it is the post Habib fight where he's where he's crying and stuff. But I think a massive part of this, after every fight, there's always that one sentence from Conor is like, you know, someone, and I was actually talking to a few people about this. I was watching the documentary. There's nothing you can say to a fighter afterwards, but always someone tries to say something, and then he always comes out with like well, I lost, and that's all that matters. You know, and there's nothing you can say after that. And it's like, you know,
the bottom line is this, yeah.
But he, like, that's actually brilliant, like, because that's the first step of kind of fucking moving on and going to the next thing, which you kind of have to do while still like acknowledging what fucking happened. So, like, episode 2 was the broken hand, as you mentioned. I've written down a quote, the politics of the prize, which he said on it.
We didn't go into it in the documentary, but there was, like, he got surgery on that hand, and then, you know, something went wrong and something went wrong with the pin and it had to be fixed again. So there was actually a lot more to that. It went on a lot longer, but obviously you can't go into in depth in absolutely everything because you're trying to tell the story. You're, like, you know, obviously MMA fans have seen the press conferences and things like that, but a lot of people who are going to be watching it aren't Conor McGregor fans or don't follow the UFC or don't follow MMA. So you kind of have to, you know, I understand that the people editing it have to kind of cater for a lot of different audiences, especially on Netflix where it's going to 90 odd countries or whatever it is. Yeah. And it did feel, though, once that injury, like most of McGregor's injuries, it feels like they stay with him for a long time. And even though that didn't get great, now I remember there was a scene where he said to Gunny, you went wrong and I had to kind of do it again and stuff. But like when it got better, it was better. And he kind of said that himself and he kind of put it out of his mind. Whereas the knees and stuff, I felt like they've affected him for a while. But the having the Cerrone fight, the pandemic coming, him not being able to get a fight and all, it felt like, you know, you could see from the outside, because he was, you know, we saw the tweet coming that he was retiring and he was gone. He was talking about retiring, and that even kind of went into episode 3 as well. I think it felt like he was just sick of it at that stage, because he wanted to get that season, which he's obviously spoken about before, and he spoke about himself. He wasn't able to get it, and it felt like it was just unbelievably frustrating for it. And, you know, he was still, even at that stage, talking about, like, I have to give it all away to get it back, you know, and he had so much money at this stage that it was almost impossible, and all he wanted to do was fight, you know. And when he couldn't fight, it felt like it felt like the frustration levels he had were just unbelievable. And, you know, then there was the clip of him watching. Well, you know, he had laid out, you know, pretty clearly in a lot of media that he wanted to do a season. He wanted to fight 3-4 times, and, you know, he got the first victory and he's looking to go again. He was, you know, I think, did he release the DMs with Dana like a month after, or even less after the Cerrone fight? He was messaging looking for another fight. Obviously, Corona came along. The UFC couldn't sell tickets at the arena, but, like, I don't know, they probably could have done a ridiculous pay-per-view number if they had have, you know, everybody's sitting at home, there's no other sports on at the time. Like, it's easy to forget how locked down, how shut down everything was.
That was the biggest mistake they ever made. Remember Tony Ferguson and Gaethje did like fucking 750,000. Like, McGregor could have done fucking 3 million. Like, I'm not even joking. He would have done a massive number. They fucked that up royally, I think.
Yeah, I think that, like, you know, obviously there's more going on that we don't know about, probably in the, you know, the brass of ahead of Dana White and all that stuff. But yeah, to me, and it seemed a very mind-boggling decision, and obviously it did really frustrate Conor, and, you know, had him, you know, saying he was going to pack it all in and retire. But I think, you know, most people knew that it was, and the talking heads that came into the documentary straight away were like, this is just I think Joe Rogan was saying, Conor McGregor wants you to talk about him, you're talking about him, or this is just a negotiation and things like that. So I think, yeah, pretty much people knew that it wasn't going to be the end. The end of Conor McGregor. He's retired a few times at this stage.
Yeah.
On Twitter.
Thanks for the cheese. I remember him watching the Habib fight and Habib retire. It was like, if he was ever talking about retiring, like, there's no retiring out of McGregor, because him watching that is like, I can't believe it. I can't believe he's retiring, you know. So, but I think we
were the same when we probably, I have to go back and listen to the podcast, but you know, maybe the fact that he sat down with his mum and
no, but I actually mean,
like, you know,
from Conor's point of view, like, Conor's I could never go out the way he just went out, kind of thing, you know, which. Yes, well, I think from Habib's point of view, obviously we were all probably off on that one, but he's like, I could never do what he kind of did, point of view. But that Habib stuff, it feels like, you know, it was interesting, the Dylan Dennis jumping into the crowd and all that was in the earlier ones, but the Habib hate running through it all, yeah, do you know what, it probably could have been a bit more. You could probably do a whole documentary on just that alone, I suppose. But one part, just before we move on to maybe the final episode, Graham, the weight cutting scene, which was pretty fucking awful. And no, we all know about weight cutting, but like for a guy who used to fight 10 pounds lower, to look at the struggle he made there, it was ridiculous.
That's what I was going to say. I wish we had footage. Obviously Conor lets us film pretty much over the last 11, 12 years. He lets us film pretty much whatever. Fly on the wall, just kind of be there whenever we can or whatever. Whenever something's going on, but we weren't allowed into those weight cuts to 145, and that's probably a testament, or that's probably an indication of how dire they were for him. And not so much in this film or in the notorious 2017 documentary, you kind of see how drained he is. Like you'd get an electric shock if you touched him. Even Dana White comments in that documentary about how crazy he looks and how crazy weight cutting is when it's done to this extreme. So yeah, if you can imagine how difficult it is for fighters to cut the amount of weight that Conor cuts to get to 155, comparing it to 145, it probably would have been, the footage is probably, if we had got the footage, it probably would have been in, scary stuff, because yeah, it's a real struggle to get down to 155, and getting down to 145 for a man of his frame, even at the time. It was a bigger fight to Conor than the actual fight. Once Conor had made weight at 145, he'd be acting and kind of in a mood as if he just won the fight, and that the fight is the easy part. It's the making weight and getting rehydrated. That was the big struggle back then at 145.
Yeah, and I suppose it was really bad the way they showed it there, but then the leg break was even worse, because like it felt like afterwards, when we maybe talked about it on the podcast, but he talked about it afterwards, that he knew he was going to be hurt coming into the fight. He knew it was hurt coming into the fight, but he knew it was like not stable. Like it felt like, sometimes they say a person knows their own body even better than the scans or the doctors. So it felt like that was the case here. And for the first time ever, he kind of was even...
Well, also those scans came and he was training after that for I don't know how long, like a week or two or however long it was. So obviously you're probably going to take more damage moving around even, and taking kicks and giving kicks and even standing on it. Obviously it snapped in the cage when he stood on it. It wasn't a kick.
It just felt like there was something there that the scans didn't see, or that someone didn't spot, or whatever. Like it
could be that, or it could have gotten worse from then. A bone bruise could probably turn into a hairline fracture. I don't know. Like, I'm no orthopedic expert or anything, but even if that's the right word. But I think everybody, you can see from the footage, and everybody kind of knew that there was a risk being taken.
Do you think like Conor was able to get away with the risk being taken before, because it was, stay ready until you don't have to get ready stuff? If he fought, if he was in camp 3 months in the year, or let's say 4 months of the year, he was actually probably training like 11 months of the year, so it didn't make that much of a difference. But now if he was in camp, for one fight, he was probably only in camp for 10 weeks, and the other 9 months of the year he actually wasn't in camp. That has to be.
I suppose the more hindrances and the more kind of obstacles, or the more kind of work you leave yourself, or the more things you have to work around in order to stay healthy and stay fit, the harder it is to concentrate on other things. And maybe it's in your 20s, your body's a bit, I know myself in my 30s, my body's falling apart. So obviously I'm not an athlete. I don't take care of my body at all compared to, UFC athletes and things like that. But yeah, it's probably a number of things. It's probably, not being in the same shape, constantly, like the stay ready days, as you mentioned, it used to be like a big saying of Conor's, but obviously he has loads of things pulling him in different directions. He has other business opportunities that he's capitalized on, brilliantly for himself and all that. So yeah, I suppose, when you've nothing else to do and you can just stay in the gym the whole time and all that stuff, you probably can get over things easier, or age comes into it and things like that. I don't know what the answer is really.
Myself and as I said earlier on, myself and Harry have done like another podcast about basically this as well, but not necessarily just the documentary, but fighters in general. And when they get to this stage of their career, the toughness of being able to keep it up, whether it's having loads of good things or having loads of bad things. And McGregor has had lots of both of them. Mostly
momentum, and like we talk about it on the podcast, like undefeated fighters or people on win streaks and things like that, or guy coming off a couple of losses, there's extra pressure on, things like that. It's the same for anybody. Conor McGregor, the John Jones, GSP, Anderson Silva. We've seen these guys after they lose their belt talk about the pressure of these big fights and things like that, and nearly being a relief and stuff like that. So they're like, there's a lot of pressure going on there. There's just a lot of things going on. There's a lot of people wanting to see you lose. There's a lot of people wanting to see you win. There's people doubting you, all that stuff. So the momentum, I think, of winning fights definitely helps as well. Like I think that's something that's maybe a little bit overlooked in sports in general, about confidence and momentum.
It is true. It's true. I think the final thing before we move on to the couple of questions for me, and I spoke at the start about the overall feel of the documentary, and I suppose the overall feel coming up to the end was a bit like, there's a little bit of like we saw before the Poirier match a bit of the like, this is why people don't like Conor, after them reminding us why people do like Conor for 3 episodes really. But then I think it was brought back again to where it's like, it's not that you have an opinion on whether you like him or don't like him, but it's kind of like, geez, I'd love to see this lad win another fight, kind of thing. And it's a similar thing. I don't know if anyone watched the golf version of Drive to Survive, and they did a similar thing with Brooks Koepka, who has won a lot of stuff years ago, and now has kind of gone bad and is kind of trying to make his way back, but struggling to do that. And I think, even he's not maybe the most likable character in the world either, but I think a lot of people watching it, including myself, is like, Jesus, I wouldn't mind seeing him win something else. You'd love to see someone actually get that bit of redemption, and it felt like that was what the documentary.
Well, that's like people letting people in on their journey, letting them see behind the scenes. And Conor's been absolutely phenomenal over the years, like letting SevereMMA at the start come in, and we didn't have a resume or anything, come in and film, and really like let us into his life and kind of trust us and not be shy and be himself, and show us different sides of him and things like that. And obviously it humanizes him and shows he's not perfect, he has his flaws or whatever, but like he at the end of the day, he's just a guy trying to go out there, capitalize on opportunities, win fights, and that's what's driving him, and kind of that's what's been driving him. He was obsessed with the game. Like you talked about that 2012 interview, SevereMMA, the one that kind of pops up in all of these documentaries. He's talking about it being obsessed with the game, and obviously nowadays, probably back then, MMA is running through his head. He's going to sleep watching animals wrestling on YouTube and things like that. He's probably not doing that anymore, but
although what about that fucking crocodile alligator scene?
Oh well, yeah. But it's probably not the same extent of obsession with the game, because obviously other things are pulling him in different directions. But I think he's kind of, in a lot of ways, his life and his growth as a person through all this fame has played out in a really public setting, and he hasn't really shied away from that. He's kind of used it to show himself and to kind of humanize himself and to let people to kind of be on the journey with him and feel like they're on the journey with him and feel like they know.
Yeah, and it felt like a person who we all thought, maybe apart from yourself, but has gotten away from that, away from being like one of us. It made him feel like he was actually just a normal person through a lot of this documentary, which was, a good sign. And like some people are calling it like a puff piece and stuff, which we talked about earlier. It was like, yeah, that's kind of what it was, but like it did the fucking job, it did the job with it. Let's just answer a few of the questions and we'll move on. Obviously talk about the
like it's a fly on the wall, like footage mixed in with talking heads and like things like that and narration. So obviously it's not to everybody's liking or whatever, but it seems to have gone over well with most of the fans. Obviously, the Irish media, very begrudging when it comes to Conor, even MMA in general, even before there was any controversies or things like that. So, they're obviously, some people are going to stick to the narratives or whatever, or find the things that kind of back up what they think. But I think a lot of people will, just look at it as he's a human guy, and a lot of mad stuff has happened to him, and he's a bit of a mad character, but he's just a regular enough in some ways, Guy.
Yeah, indeed. So a couple of the questions, a few of the questions you kind of touched on.
Sure, like, would me or you would probably be absolute lunatics if we had the money and fame and all that stuff. If that happened to us when we were in our early 20s,
Definitely be dead. 100% without a shadow of a doubt. I get 20 quid now and I'm gone fucking mad. But we'll answer a couple of questions. So there's a few people have asked this. Kabina, why didn't you include more about the likes of the assault? Surely that's a critical part of the story. Why did he not reference the heavy drinking reported by his camp in the build-up to the Habib fight? Why didn't you interview anyone outside of the McGregor camp?
I don't think there. I don't think there was, heavy drinking going on in the Habib camp like that. We just left out. It felt like
there was, though, didn't there? Like he was.
No, it's not that we left out. It's like if Conor's going for a drink or something by himself, like he's not telling me, he's not telling Dara, he's not telling bring a camera or whatever. If he's having in a hotel room, he's having a drink or something, I don't know about it. Like, he's not, we don't film absolutely everything. Like, sometimes there's not footage for things, or sometimes, the narration will kind of say that things went off the rails, or he says, I wasn't fully committed or outside of the cage, I don't think, I can see some things that other people said, you should have included, but that one, yeah, I don't really see that one as being a big deal.
What about like some of the legal problems? And he's gone through a lot of different things,
Yeah. The Dolly and the court case and the community service were in there as well. Like, the
lad with the phone wasn't there.
What happened with that? That was just like he threw a phone on the floor allegedly or something. Like, I don't know. Is that important?
There now. Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe it is to some people, but I don't know. Maybe other people don't care about that. Like, for me, I'm obviously in this footage. I'm in this Conor McGregor world like for a lot of years, and sometimes maybe my perspective is completely different to somebody on the outside, and I can't see the wood from the trees. Is that what they say?
That's the one. I think I always get that one.
Yeah, but it's, even in the edit, or even while the edits are going on, and you're seeing rough edits, and you've already seen the footage a lot of times, and you kind of stuff that was funny the first time it happened might not be funny anymore because you've seen it so many times. So sometimes it's hard to know. What's the best thing when you've been so deep in the footage for so many years.
I think from my point of view, right, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that, to see his reaction to it, to see like him going through it. Like, let's say someone makes a fucking allegation about him, whether it's punching him in the head or whatever it might be, or him punching him in the head or whatever it might be, and then him like thinking about a court case, or I can't believe this person.
As I said, I wasn't in the edit as well. I was in LA, but maybe some things, I'm no legal expert, but maybe some things are better not spoken about, or not. It's some things
can't be spoken about either from our point of view,
or maybe you're not allowed to talk about, or I don't know the legal ins and outs of that, but maybe some decisions were made on that tact. But yeah, it's hard for me to say.
Yeah, I think people need to realise we're in Ireland as well, and people know the laws in Ireland are very, very, very restrictive. So a lot of that stuff actually can't be put in or talked about and things. But I would love to see, as I said earlier on, there could be 2 or 3 more documentaries made out of this period, like the Habib period, but also like the McGregor, kind of the dark side of Conor McGregor, if you want to put it that way, but with him included, like him talking about all that. And maybe there's some stuff that, like, some of these things take years and years and years to reach a natural end before he probably can talk about them or whatever. So I think there's probably a case for another couple of documentaries outside of that. But I would kind of tend to agree that I think there could have been a little bit more of that. But while there was a bit of it as well, most of it was stuff he kind of came through. 1 or 2 more. The Malignaggi footage as well. You mentioned that. That was something though that everyone wanted to see, I feel like. But if it was because I don't know, people keep replying to on Twitter and things like that saying, "Oh, John, when are you going to release it?" So John Kavanagh must have said something about the footage being released at some stage or something. But if you were to release the Malignaggi footage, you'd need to release like a fucking 36 minutes bar or whatever. Like, what are you going to put in the documentary? There's 2 spars as well. So there's 2 spars. I don't know. People are they're just always looking to kind of pick holes in things. Other people have valid criticisms. Other people, they don't like the style, understandable, it's not their thing. No, but in fairness, on the Malignaggi one, I think people are just genuine about that one. They're like, oh, we'd love to see it, it's a pity wasn't in it. But like, I actually don't understand how you could even put that in, because like, it'll just be a whole episode, and just like that, they should add that as an added
like
Christmas
pacing
special.
and the narrative structure and things like that are things that are taken into account when on an edit as well, and some things are, you know, dropped for reasons like that, and it's maybe aren't seen as important as maybe they are to other people, you know, people who are maybe nitpicking those types of things. But maybe it's not nitpicking, maybe they're right, I don't know.
Last one, so we'll move on from there. Will there be more, Graham? Do you think there's going to be more?
I don't know for sure, but yeah, I don't see why he would stop now. If he's planning on coming back like it looks like he is, then yeah, why wouldn't there be? I'd guess.
Yeah, indeed, and I hope there is. Like, I think there's a lot more to tell and a lot more to talk about in that. So, right, let's move on. Francis Ngannou, Graham. I actually did a Sherdog thing about this, so maybe I'll let you start. What was your initial reaction to Francis' whole news, him signing for PFL?
My initial reaction was to kind of be like, it sounds great, but I'm a skeptic, and I'm just kind of like, I need to wait and see what happens. You know, the one thing that I will say, if he is getting, if his opponents are going to get 2 million, that will create a good incentive for somebody who, you know, fight out their contract, or, you know, an Overeem or somebody like that, or I don't know, I can't really think off the top of my head of too many viable people who aren't already signed to like a major promotion. But, you know, it would be a pretty big fight. I'm just skeptical. Obviously, the boxing, if the PFL deal is as as it seems in the press release, and he's able to get himself a really good boxing deal, then it's fantastic, and it's great for whoever comes in and fights him, because they're getting 2 million or whatever. But it's still up in the air to me. It's still yet to be decided if this has worked out for him or not. We also, I don't know if it's been reported or speculated on. We actually don't know exactly how much he was offered by the UFC. You know, Dana has said things, and Francis has said that's not exactly true, or don't believe everything they say, or things like that. So I think it's still up in the air for me whether or not it's. I'm glad he's got this deal. He seems happy with it. You know, it could have been a lot worse. You know, it could have been a lot worse when this first happened. Like, you know, it could have been a lot worse in my opinion. But if he can add a lucrative boxing match to this, then he's laughing, and it's definitely a success. But it's yet to be seen, in my opinion. Yeah. I actually didn't see your take on it, so I'm interested.
I'm kind of would tend to agree with you. Like, my biggest worry for Francis always was the long term, right? And that worry is still there, because he signed a 2 or 3 fight deal with PFL. So the long term worry is still there. Now, he has got himself such a good deal, possibly, that he mightn't even need to worry about the long term, because like, he has a boxing match, 3 fights in the high millions, and he's, you know, thanks for the cheese, good luck. He's nearly 40 years of age anyway, so maybe that doesn't even matter. Do you know, my thoughts were the same as yours. Like, I'm very skeptical about this whole PFL thing, because the only thing I like about the PFL deal, right, is it's, what did I say, high 7 figures. So what would high 7 figures be? 6 to 9 million, something like that. So that's a good deal per fight. You know, you said himself and the UFC kind of disagreed. I think they both kind of said around 7 million per fight, right? But that was going to be a similarly linted deal, I think, but with the possibility of going on a little bit longer. Which I don't know.
And none of the kind of extra unused before kind of stipulations in the contract that the UFC didn't want to agree with, that maybe other promotions were more likely to agree with. And, you know, if PFL is around for the next 10, 20 years and he's an ambassador, or he's involved in EFC Africa, and that's a success, he probably has set himself up for a good retirement. But that all is yet to be seen what's going to happen with that. You know, hopefully PFL will grow and become this, you know, worldwide phenomenon, and, you know, become a known name in casuals' mind, and continue to grow and be, you know, challenge UFC or whatever their goals are. Yeah. But we've seen MMA promotions come and go a lot. So yeah, I like PFL. I hope it does well, but it's definitely not as you know, stable a proposition as the UFC is.
let me read out a couple of the keys here. So there was an article by John Nash, but also stuff that Francis said in his own video. And I think he did an article with, I think it was the New York Times, or no, it was DAZN, I think, actually. So the deal with PFL was agreed 2 months ago. As you mentioned, Graham, PFL Africa thing, he's going to be on the board kind of on that. He may have a tune-up fight in 2023 in boxing, a tune-up match, and then he wants to match up with Deontay Wilder. We can talk about that in a second. He said he'd be looking at the PFL tournament for a possible opponent. As you said, Graham, $2 million for his opponent is guaranteed. He still wants to fight John Jones if it could be worked out. Well, that's grand. If it was up to him, he'd fight Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder next. And then from the John Nash article, as I said, 2 or 3 fights, guaranteed high 7 figure, a split of the net profits, a signing bonus or salary to serve as a brand ambassador for PFL, a right to have his own sponsors in the cage, non-exclusive regards to boxing, no champions clause or other extensions, a minimum salary for his opponents, what you mentioned. I think just a couple of parts there in the middle, right? A split of events net profits.
Net profits, yeah.
How much is he going to be paying PFL?
Maybe that is, I don't know, maybe that is a thing that's they're going to have a big show for a pay-per-view and it's going to be something, but
that sounds like something a Liverpool fan would be
well. It remains to be seen. Just as I said, a lot of things remain to be seen, but it definitely has potential to work. So that's something. But
if they're playing Francis fucking 8 or 9 million, they're not going to have any net profits, are they? Like, so he's not going to be getting anything from that. I just think that's one of those things that, like, I said on the Sherlock shows, I sent it to a friend of mine, like, who's involved in finance, and he kind of said to me, this is written from the point of view of someone who wants to make it look like they got a great deal. While maybe still being a great deal, I think it very much is that. Having his own sponsors, it's weird on too. Like, I know he couldn't have sponsors in the UFC, but like, why didn't he have a massive sponsor outside of the UFC? I don't know. Like, hopefully he'll be able to get one, but I like when he's his own manager and all like that. I don't think that's as easy said than done. But I think the crux of this here, right, is in, as I said, the short term, medium term. The short term, if he can get a big boxing match and earn a load of money, that's great. But in the medium term, he has basically gotten the exact same amount of money from PFL, a little bit less, as John Nash said in his thing as well. Let me just read you out this short sentence. He said, it's very unlikely that the UFC offer would have paid him more over the 3 fights in his new PFL deal, as Jones' fight would have potentially paid him more than 10 million once his pay-per-view bonuses added. So maybe I misread that there, but the UFC would have paid him more than 10 million per fight with the pay-per-view added. Obviously, the PFL's not going to be able to pay as much as that. It would have paid more than that.
Like, maybe a part of it was a bit of respect or a bit of
yeah, indeed. But he
want you to care here. Like.
Yeah, but he's gotten a deal that is not on par, definitely not on par with it, I don't think, as the sentence I just read out there says, but not far away from it. And plus, if he can get a big boxing match, it will take him over and above that. So he's got everything he wanted. He got his freedom. He got easier matchups and all of that as well for the same or maybe slightly more money or maybe just slightly less. Which is like, I didn't think he could do, to be honest, and fair play to him for doing that. And I, like, at the end of the day, and I said it on the video I did the other day as well, but like, my main thing about being critical of Francis not taking the UFC deal was like, I was hoping he wouldn't get fucking screwed. Like, I was hoping he was turning down this massive deal, and like, where the fuck are you going to get that money? Now, PFL have promised him that money. But like, Graham, we've been around for a long time, right? How the fuck can PFL afford to pay him this amount of money? Maybe once.
Well, they're definitely in for the long haul in their review at the moment. Anyway, if they're putting money into Jake Paul, they're putting big money into Francis Ngannou. They're starting this pay-per-view division. They're definitely making a go of it. But Affliction. Affliction kind of went for the same kind of. They went a lot quicker at the kind of the trying to sell pay-per-views at big stars. They kind of didn't build up the way PFL did, but they had some big backers behind them. Even people like Donald Trump were involved, and that didn't last very long. So I'm kind of like with you, where maybe I hope they have a really good plan for this and they're in it for the long haul, but like, maybe they do have a plan, but like, maybe you can pay 7 million. They're going to need a pay-per-view to do well, and how much are you going to charge for this pay-per-view? Are people just going to legally stream it? Like, do they have the kind of mechanisms to shut that down? In the same way the UFC do, even though the UFC can't even shut it down. Like, it's easy to get a HD 4K, whatever you want, stream of any boxing, UFC, Bellator, or whatever.
Are they going to be able to be on the ESPN pay-per-view, or are they going to have to go to normal pay-per-view? Like, I can't see the UFC being very open about allowing them to be on their platform that they've built, basically, as well. Like, I think that's another factor people are kind of forgetting as well. Like, a lot of people in America have cut the cord and are now on like YouTube, whatever it's called, where they don't even have the television and they can't even get a pay-per-view that way. And maybe they'll get it, but like, it's very different, the pay-per-view scene with, as you said, streaming, but also just being able to get it. And card cutters now, I think it's a very, very different situation than it was before. Plus, you're not the UFC. It's not a UFC pay-per-view. Plus, who is he going to fight? Like, if he fights Verdum and puts it on pay-per-view, like, that's not doing, I don't think, 750,000 buys. If he did fight,
what about bring back Uberim and have it not in Las Vegas?
Yeah, but he knocked Uberim's spark out.
Do people even remember that?
Like,
we do, but like,
yeah. Well, what you said before, like, see, there's a thing about what you said before. Like, let's say you're Tom Aspinall, and you have 2 fights left in your contract, and you're fighting Tybura coming up, I think. And I don't know how many fights he's left in his contract, but let's say, whether it's him or Pavlovich or whoever it might be, or Jailton Almeida, you beat the next lad you fight, and then you say, well, maybe I'll fight Francis for that 2 million, That'd be, and then it'd be a great fight. I mean, him versus Aspinall, if Aspinall remained like undefeated or whatever in the UFC and went out.
Yeah. Well, we saw with Affliction that Andrei Arlovsky and Tim Sylvia, we were both in the UFC at the time, UFC champions, things like that, left and went to fight Fedor, for the big money. And
what happened to Affliction after that fight?
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit of this. Like, I really hope PFL do well. I hope they stick around. I hope this works out for them. It'd be good for MMA to have another competitor in there, all that stuff, and for Francis as well. Like, Francis seems like a really nice guy. When I met him a few years ago, he's a phenomenal fighter. He's got a ridiculously interesting and hard and just really genuinely crazy backstory. Even being so inexperienced, being so new to MMA and doing what he was doing on his way up. And there's just, there's a lot you can market and a lot you can promote with there. And if PFL do a good job of getting that to the masses, they could do a big number, but it just remains to be seen. I know we keep saying that, but it just does remain to be seen.
Do you know another part of this as well? It feels like it's very hard to get a nuanced opinion on this, because like, there's a lot of people out there is like, you can't say anything bad about the UFC, you can't say anything bad about Dana White, MMA only exists in the UFC, is like, PFL doesn't exist, Bellator doesn't exist, One Championship doesn't exist unless you're in the UFC. That's the end of it. And then you have other people out there who have been like cheering on Francis from second one, go, you do it, you leave, you go, and like not actually really caring about Francis. I'm glad he got this done, but I think there was like a genuine there was a carefree attitude towards him doing this. Now, it's hopefully turned out well. It seems like it's turned out well.
He needed to get the deal done, a good deal for the rest of his career. It isn't going to be that long in terms of his lifespan. So, in order to set himself up like he should be set up, he should already be set up from his UFC run, but isn't. He's obviously, he's not struggling, but in terms of the money he's been involved in generating for the UFC and things like that, obviously he should have made more. And like, I don't think anybody, even people who are UFC stands would
the UFC
argue that
offered him,
Francis has made a lot of money for the UFC and should have got paid more. But it was a huge risk. He was like dangling there in limbo, and he still is in a way. Obviously he needs to get the boxing match done, but at least he has this PFL.
And hopefully, Did like the UFC had offered him that money, so it wasn't as if like the UFC were hanging him out to dry or not paying him. Like the UFC had offered him the money. Well, I think he said on the Ariel show that it was more about, it wasn't really about the money. It was more about the stipulations and the kind of future of the athletes in the sport in general that he wanted a few changes made to, and the UFC just weren't willing to agree to. But now he's gone boxing for Bob Arum. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I want all these people looked after and all. He's going fighting for Eddie Hearn or Bob Arum or fucking Don King or someone, paying lads 500 quid and robbing all their money for
well,
years.
I don't think the fact that he like
the
fact that he'll fight for like the highest bidder or box for the highest bidder in boxing takes away from him trying to do a good thing and in his negotiations. But maybe it just remains to be seen if this is a good idea or not. And I think people are really kind of jumping the gun and trying to
100%.
decide if it's been a glorious decision or a glorious failure.
100%. And I think like people who are accusing other people of jumping the gun have jumped the gun themselves. As you said, this is very much a wait and see sort of thing. Like, imagine if PFL fucking blows up and goes out of business after one fight. Well, then Francis is made a terrible decision and is in a terrible place. Imagine if he doesn't get imagine if he has like a warm-up boxing match and he gets knocked out in that or something. Like, he's in a terrible place because he's not getting the big boxing match. And we're like, are those fucking 3 fights in PFL even going to happen? Like this has not been written yet. Like, it looks like he's in a great position now. And he is in a great position right now. And, he's in a position that everything doesn't need to go right. But unless everything goes 100% right, he's not going to be completely over and above what the UFC were giving him in a place where he'd have to, have good even fights in a place where he's going to build his brand even more and be the UFC champion. We know that.
Can I ask you a question? You obviously follow boxing more than me, but like for example, the Tyson Fury purse, Tyson's probably going to want like 70-30, 80-20 or something like that. He's even against top level boxers. I've heard anyway. That's the kind of cut he's looking for. How much is a boxing purse? Like, how much is 20% of a Tyson Fury boxing purse?
I don't know. Like, I saw Tyson Fury put out a thing yesterday saying like lads were looking for who was it? I can't remember who it was. Was looking for 20 million to box him. But like most lads who box, say the likes of Fury, and they are the obvious B side and stuff, they're like 3 to 5 million maybe or something like that. Now in the position where he is now, which is good money. And like, Francis felt like he wanted more, but I think he would probably take that now. But like, if you're getting 7 million for an MMA fight, why would you take 3 million for a boxing match? I don't know. Maybe
well,
if
in his head, he's probably gonna hit Tyson Fury. He's gonna go down, and they're gonna have a big money rematch where he's in the driving seat or whatever.
Yeah, but I think that's just a bonus anyway, so that's grand. So if he can get that bonus and then come in to do MMA and win his MMA fights, then he's rosy. But yeah, I don't know.
There's still lots of questions hanging over this whole situation.
Yeah. Also, can we let's agree on that. People have jumped the gun on both ways. If you're calling this 100% a win, I don't think it is. If you're calling it 100% loss, it definitely isn't. It's like as we say as well with the UFC, it's fucking was unwritten with the UFC as well. He could have signed a 5-5 contract and maybe they wouldn't have even happened. That can happen as well. So we must say that. I just think it's very odd as well that this whole situation, people are not allowed to have their opinion on it nearly. Like, if your opinion is, I wanted Francis to fight John Jones, or I wanted him to fight Pavlovich, and he's not giving me that now and I don't like him anymore, well, that's your prerogative, right? You can have that opinion. If your opinion is also like, fuck it, the UFC are only a shower of bastards, Francis went out and he got paid and he doesn't have to kowtow to them, that's a fine opinion. My opinion's kind of somewhere in the middle, to be honest, and I think most people's opinion should be somewhere in the middle. But like, maybe we can get that. Let's say if the Aspinall did leave and we could get Aspinall versus Francis outside the UFC, or Cyril versus Francis 2 outside the UFC or something like that, it'd be absolutely class. So, whatever. But
yeah, but like, some of that is just like sticking to one side as well. When it's all said and done, and we do know what the result is, then people will probably still be sticking to what they said originally.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's just
it's like sometimes politics.
Listening to people on social media and things like that, sometimes it's not actually their real opinion. It's just a bit of anger or a bit of like being a contrarian or things like that. So yeah, sometimes I don't know. People are just.
But it's more than that. It's like us talking about
somebody they like said something, so they're going to parrot that. We see it with Jamie Redknapp. Jamie Carragher, Gary Neville, they can say something and you just see it getting parroted, and then that becomes like the lore, and people are talking about it years later, like pretending Paul Scholes was better than Gundogan and things like that, or pretending Paul Scholes was brilliant at football, like, and just rewriting history. So we've seen it.
Yeah. But it's a terrible point, but in a good point, because it's like Man United versus Liverpool. Like I'm always going to argue for Man United. You're always going to argue for Liverpool because we have chosen our sides. But that's a really weird thing in mixed martial arts. Like it's like,
but I know that I'm arguing from the
so do I.
Liverpool
Like
side,
absolutely.
and like I'm looking to put the spin that I want
absolutely,
on it.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Just for a bit of crack as well.
Yeah. But like MMA shouldn't be like that because there is no teams. We give out about the UFC the whole fucking time here, but like. The UFC offered him a great deal. If you deny that, you're fucking fooling yourself. Like, and Francis turned it down. It's like,
well. The UFC offered him a great deal relative to what they offer other people.
That's a
Did they offer
very
a
good
great
point.
deal though? I don't think so. Yeah.
You're 100% correct. Yeah, you're actually 100% correct. And that's a great point. And like, he harkens back to the whole point. Like, the UFC are not paying people enough, and Francis has every right to be fucking mad with him. But still, they did pay him or offer to pay him a shitload more money than they've ever paid anyone before. So like, he did defeat the UFC in a way. You know, he did make them pay him a shitload of money. And then he turned it down. So,
I think also some people really wanted to see Francis Ngannou and John Jones, and they're pissed off that he didn't fulfill their want. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, and also you mentioned the Tyson Fury thing. Like, Tyson Fury has just used UFC champions down through the years. I put up a tweet about it the other day. He has called out Junior Dos Santos. He's called out Cain Velasquez. He's called out now John Jones. He's called out Francis Ngannou. I'm sure
it
there's
helps
a couple
them
more.
too, though. It builds their profile as well.
Absolutely, but Francis believed him, I think. Now I'm sure he would take a Francis boxing match if you could get a big amount of money out of it and all of that. But Francis is also no longer the UFC champion.
With you know more about boxing again, but you don't have like mandatory challengers that you have to,
you do, yeah, but like
is that still a thing, or what's going on?
At heavyweight now, it's only Usyk and Tyson Fury, and they have all the belts. So it's not. I think like if they fought each other, they'd allow them. But then like I don't know. I think Fury fought his mandatory not too long ago. So I'd say if if they wanted to make the Francis fight, they probably could. But I don't know. Boxing is a mess.
Yeah, maybe we can get some boxing expert on to inform us. Is there who's a good boxing expert?
Sure. Every MMA journalist is a boxing expert these days that have to let you know. What a lot of shit. Like, what a lot of bollocks, Graham. We're an MMA podcast.
You've been talking up kickboxing and grappling on one of these, so you're one to talk. You big fucking
that's true. It's a fair point. Although at least they're more
throwing
like
stones at glass houses over there, Sean. I remember the old Sean Sheehan. He used to just like the old cage fighting, and that was it.
Cage fighting. I don't even like that anymore. I'm only messing. It's great, but. Yeah, I suppose we'll leave it there. If any more points in the whole Francis thing or the McGregor thing or anything did we leave out, Graham? I don't know. It's
basically going to leave it on Sean's a prick.
Yeah, Sean's a prick.
Hopefully people enjoy it, and obviously it's not going to be for everybody. He's a polarizing figure, but I think there's a lot of never before seen behind the scenes stuff. Good footage.
Why wasn't I in it? Is the fucking big question.
Say again?
Why wasn't I in it? I should have been in it.
Why weren't you in it? Yeah, I don't know. You weren't in it. A lot of the talking heads were
Yanks.
American, yeah. So I don't know. Maybe that was.
Also, my interview, I feel like could be a good way to start the next one. Like, and he's like, I'm coming.
Baloney.
Oh no, that was another interview as well. But the one in.
It started with him complimenting Sean Sheehan, and it was for no reason. And try and work that into the narrative.
This must get in, lads. This must get into it. Yeah, but no, he gave a few good snippets in the one that we did in Dublin. Like, it's also though. Just before we move on. And before we ended up, Connor's been out for an awful fucking long time. Like, that interview I did with him was in February of last year. So that's 15 months ago. And he was talking about coming back in like the late summer, early autumn. And it's the fucking summer again now. Like, it's, I don't know. Have you any insight? Has he been injured again or anything? Or is it just like, what's going on?
Yeah, well, like in the documentary, you can see him talking to a surgeon, Dr. Neil Elatrash, in the hospital, and they're saying, maybe 10 to 12 months before you're back doing everything. And obviously, you need to get yourself back in fight shape and things like that. And, usually I'd be I'd be getting the log notes or getting the footage from Dara and doing the log notes up and keeping as up to date on the footage as possible. But obviously, there's been a lot going on with meeting deadlines and getting stuff done, getting the I's dotted and T's crossed, as they say, in this documentary. So I do have a bit of log notes to catch up on, but I haven't heard of any major setback or anything like that. But yeah, I don't know, to be honest, but I think like 10 to 12 months was a bit, maybe, if it was a different sport, if it wasn't a fight sport, maybe if you were playing soccer or swimmer or something, some sport that isn't, guys trying to kick you as hard as they can in the leg and you trying to kick them and constantly, twisting and torquing and all this stuff. So, with Chris Weidman, I don't think it's taken him a very long time to come back. A similar injury there, so maybe it's just playing it safe, and maybe he has, we talked about it earlier, kind of trying to push through too quick, and I think he probably did come back a little bit too early against Brandao from his ACL injury and kind of led to some more problems and things like that. So maybe it is a case of not rushing it and making sure everything is 100% correct before you go. But yeah, that's just speculation on my part.
Yeah, I obviously we moved away from the documentary for a second, but like I think a lot of people would like to see a redemption again, or would like to see him back at his best again, or make another run again. Like I've said it multiple times over the last year or so, that it's like I think it's becoming more and more unlikely all the time, but I hope I'm wrong on that as well. Like and I say the same with Chris Weidman. I say the same with any fighter. Like even to come back and give an account of themselves like they once did. Like, and he's not that old. He's almost the exact same age as me. So what is he? 34 years of age. We're only born. I think we're only born like a week apart or 2 weeks apart or something. So it's always handy. But like, it's not that old. It's not. Although I might feel it on my shoulder at times. But it's not that old. And he could still do it. So it'd be very interesting. But yeah, we'll wait and see on that, and I'm sure we'll see more documentaries and all. So yeah, we'll leave it there. Thank you to everybody for listening. If you haven't gone over to Manscaped.com yet, please do use the promo code SevereMMA over there and get 20% off and free shipping. Manscaped have really, really, really helped us as a podcast over the last few years, and if you could help them, that would be amazing. And also, if you would like to support our work even more, Graham was talking there about 2011. That's fucking 12 years ago we've been doing this. Graham hanging around, drinking cups of coffee, getting paid fucking nothing for the last 12 years, trying to earn the knowledge we have today to do a podcast like this every week. Patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast. You could throw us an old $5, and help us to continue to do it, because like not everyone can do this. And if you would like to support the podcast and get some extra content while you're there, head on over to Patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast and sign up. From the rewatch to the Q&A, we will have loads of content every week. So sign up, patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast. And now, here's the podcast.
Graham McDonald is an idiot.
Sean Sheehan of SevereMMA.com. He even has the audacity to call himself the quote-unquote pod god.
This is Severe MMA.
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 The Severe MMA podcast is finally here.
Welcome to the Severe MMA podcast. Here's your host, Sean Sheehan.
Welcome everybody. It's episode 417 of the Severe MMA podcast. My name is Sean Sheehan, joined today by the Martin Scorsese of Irish MMA media, Graham McDonald. As we have a bit of a different podcast this week, we're going to talk about two things this week, two of the biggest stars in our sport. First of all is Francis Ngannou and his big decision to sign with the PFL. We're going to look at all sides of that. But we're also going to talk about Conor McGregor, because I have Graham with me, who has obviously been with Conor since day one doing the documentary, and a new Conor McGregor documentary has come out on Netflix. Graham was a producer on that, so I'm going to put some of the questions you sent in to him on that and talk about some of my own thoughts on it as well. So we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, we must tell you that this episode of the podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Manscaped. Friends, family and loved ones, It's Father's Day is coming up, and have you got a gift for him yet? Fear not, the leaders in below the waist grooming are here. I'm talking about our friends at Manscaped. They're saving the day yet again. Saving the day. Should have said they're shaving the day. There you go. With a total package for the father figure in your life this year. It's time to upgrade his game from waist to face with this exclusive offer. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code SevereMMA at Manscaped.com and join the 8 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. And it was funny, actually. I was going through my Manscaped stuff yesterday, or my general care stuff today, and I found a bottle of the Manscaped cologne, I suppose you call it, perfume I nearly call it, and I was like, I absolutely love it, and I love that because I'm always finding like little Manscaped gifts around the place, and they're absolutely fantastic. And you know, it's as I said, I'm always finding little gifts, but you could give a gift for your father, the father figure in your life as well. Make him the MVP with the Performance Package 4.0. In that, you'll find the Lawnmower 4.0, which is a waterproof, cordless body trimmer with a ton of other liquid formulations to go around and use for your grooming routine. The trimmer features a ceramic blade designed to cut hair on loose skin and reduce grooming accidents thanks to the advanced skin-safe technology. It's an absolute game changer for the sensitive areas. But what about the nose hairs as well? And we all know that the fathers have some of them. Well, the Weed Whacker 2.0 is for that. It trims the ear and nose hair. It's a perfect gift for Father's Day, really. With this beautiful bundle also comes the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant, Crop Reviver Toner, which everyone knows I love, as well as the Boxer Briefs and the Shed Travel Bag, which I use all the time. We all know dads love their comfort. If this grooming routine is already dialed, make sure to hook in with the Manscaped Boxers 2.0. There, without doubt, the best boxers for men of all ages. The dual pouch is designed to comfortably care for the specific region, whether he's mowing the lawn, taking out the trash, or golfing in the sun. These moisture wicking boxers breathe without breaking a sweat. So our call to action is basically this: get 20% off and free shipping with the code SevereMMA at Manscaped.com. 20% off, free shipping at Manscaped.com using the code SevereMMA.